first it was Italy, then Spain, then France. But as they went on lockdowns, Pornhub in sequence started giving them unlimited premium access to all of their content. And at this point, it's a global 1 month free premium membership for the world. And so you've seen that huge spike with pornography. And that's kind of like in the backdrop of them getting some really ugly press, because I guess a lot of sex trafficked individuals have been sponsored or uploaded onto their platforms without any kind of policing or any way to regulate their age or anything like that. So they're definitely looking for good press in the midst of this. And the isolation is lending itself in that direction. Yeah. Right.
And your first question that you sent me was, can we help Christians understand what the secular view of sexuality is? So that I'm glad you're asking that, because a lot of times we just jump into giving a Christian view, and that and our young people, including young people in the church, are picking up the secular view from the surrounding society. So I really think the church needs to get ahead of the curve and helping young people understand where these ideas are coming from, instead of just giving them Bible verses. What are the secular views? And the hookup culture today is very widespread, and young, both not just university campuses, but among non-university young people as well. And I start my chapter in Love Thy Body. Thanks for mentioning my book. I start the chapter with an anecdote where I was speaking at a local church to a young adult group. And afterwards, about half a dozen young men gathered around, and they literally said, "Now would you give us a talk on how to date? How to get a date?" Yeah. And it turned out that these 20-some young men had never had a date. And they had never, they had never just spent one-on-one time going to a movie or having a dinner with somebody of the opposite sex. And that was kind of a wake-up call for me, because what's happening is the hookup culture, the message they're getting from the hookup culture is fun means engaging in physical relationship without any emotional attachment. And so the rules of the game are, you're not to become emotionally attached, no relationship, no commitment, no exclusivity. The script is you are supposed to be able to walk away from a hookup culture, hookup encounter. You're supposed to be able to walk away as if it never happened. And in Love Thy Body, I give a lot of quotes from college students because they know the script all too well. There was a young woman named Alicia who said, "Hookups are very scripted. You learn to turn everything off except your body. You make yourself emotionally invulnerable." And another college student named Naomi said, "People assume that there are two very distinct elements in a relationship, one sexual and one emotional. And they pretend that there are clean lines between them." So both of these young people are picking up the notion that I'm supposed to be able to totally detach who I am as a whole person from what I do with my body. And that split is really the theme of my book, Love Thy Body. It's, how does this split play out in various areas, not just sexuality, but homosexuality, transgenderism, and so on. It turns out that that's that kind of the idea that you can split your body from who you are as a person is what's driving so many of these issues.
Yeah, I loved how you played out even some of the logic in the secular sexual ethic of the person who gets hurt is a victim. And so having sex without feelings means that you're empowered. And you played out some of that logic, which was just so helpful about like kind of this victimhood mentality and also this empowered mentality that are really big themes in our culture right now. And so then people divorce themselves from their emotion because it means that, that they're empowered because they don't feel when they get hurt in those moments.
Yeah, I quoted a researcher named Donna Freitas, and she did a very large study of college students and went around the country talking to college students. And she said, of course, young people have a hard time actually splitting their body, what they do with their body from their emotions. Yeah. They have a hard time with it. And when really pressed on a private, personal level, many of them say they don't like the hookup culture. And they feel confused, they feel frustrated, they feel hurt. But then they say, you can't admit that. If you admit that, it's like you were saying, if you admit that you're emotionally hurt by the fact that this person took sexual advantage of you and then disappeared, if you admit that that hurts you, then you're needy. These are the words that are used. You're needy, you're clingy, and you haven't gotten the third wave memo on the memo on third wave feminism is how one student put it.
Yeah.
The third wave, it used to be feminists were they were against pornography and they were against promiscuity, but third wave feminism is embracing it. It's saying we can be just as raunchy as men. We're pro pornography and we're pro prostitution. They're just sex workers like everyone else. So the mentality has shifted, but again, in her research, this researcher found that most young women, they're scared to death to admit it. It started with a course she was teaching. Halfway through up until about halfway through the course, all the young people were claiming to love the hookup culture. It was so liberating. And then finally, one student started to admit, I don't really like this. And then the whole class started admitting, we don't like this either. Nobody really thrives on casual, meaningless sexual encounters. We were not made that way. We were created for sexuality to be part of who we are as whole persons, with a whole person interaction with somebody else. And when we have sex, we really are not looking for just a physical reaction, sex as recreation. We really are yearning for some deeper connection with another person. So in our hearts, we're made in God's image. And so in reality, we all are hoping to reach out and form some sort of a bond with another person.
Yeah, that's well put. I think the same method can be easily applied to pornography, where people often think that they can go into a room and do this by themselves and it won't impact any other area of their life. But like when you're giving so much passion to just pixels, to just nothing, and then you go out throughout your day and you expect that not to touch the other areas of your life, there's less passion and less, it changes your moral imagination and how you view people, how you approach them, how you love them, how you hold them. All those things just play out. And so I think your method has been helpful across the board for hookup culture, porn culture, and seeing the connection between the two as well.
Oh yeah, exactly. Pornography is the ultimate in depersonalized sex, in thinking that you can be, you can react to somebody just as a body. And of course, you're treating the woman as just an image. You have no interest in who she is as a whole person. Yeah. Pornography is the ultimate. And what's interesting is that even science is supporting the idea that sex is meant to be, is meant to engage the whole person, because that researchers were surprised when they found out that sexual activity releases hormones like oxytocin, vasopressin, they're called the attachment hormones, because they do stimulate a sense of bonding and connection with other people. There's a UCLA psychotherapist who's not a Christian, but she goes through the evidence that we do form a chemical bond when we have sex with somebody. Even if you are trying to have a no strings attached encounter with somebody, in fact, your body does make, one researcher called it, you make an involuntary chemical bond, whether you mean to or not. And this UCLA psychotherapist said, you might say we are designed to bond. And her point was, she wrote a whole book on this. She said, I'm not allowed to tell my students any of this, because I'm not allowed to say anything negative. Wow. And she finally wrote a book about it in order to show that sex education as it's taught today, all the way up to the college level, is just about sex as recreation and no training in how to have a relationship. And students are coming to her at UCLA and saying, I quote one student who came to her and said, "Doctor, we're taught all about mechanics of sex and contraception and so on, but why are we not taught what it does to your heart? Mm-hmm. Why are we not taught how to have a relationship?" She had recently, a boyfriend had recently dumped her, and so she was very depressed. Yeah. So even the way it's taught in the universities, there's no emphasis on the whole person involvement. Mm. And so anyway, her point was even chemistry shows us that the biblical view is true. Yeah. That sex is meant to be part of the whole person.
Yeah. That's really helpful. And then you see the ugly side of that data of like depression, anxiety, and suicide being higher statistically now than it's ever been in human history. Like more people are lonely and hurting and estranged and relationally disenchanted than like ever before. And so I think across the board what you're saying seems to be true. And you see just the younger generations hurting in big ways.
I actually quote a doctor who says, who also works on a college campus, and says the most frequently prescribed medications to students on the college campus are birth control pills and antidepressants. Wow. She says that's not a coincidence.
Wow.